Call this meeting to order.
Call a meeting to order. Excuse me.
All right, any adjustments to the agenda?
Yeah, I'm gonna table one item.
Which one you want?
So 7A, the executive director wasn't able to make it this evening.
Okay. Select board comments, remarks. And that's, I guess we'll start with, or go ahead.
Somebody was airlifted and we had said that Alice Holloway Drive, the landing, like the designated spot was closed. I'm curious where the helicopter ended up landing.
It landed at Brattleboro Memorial Hospital.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks.
There's other places in town, but there wasn't any need to land it in town. All right. So we'll start with you, Doug.
Thank you for putting me first on the agenda. I'm going to hide behind some of the chairs because I banged up my shin. It's healing, but it doesn't look great. So you all seen my email?
Yes. Yes.
So that I'm not going to repeat everything because you're obviously aware of it. My concern is that there's going to be a wreck at that intersection. I just spent the last hour sitting in my car counting cars. There were 39 cars that came northbound on Old Route 5 South and made a left turn. There were 3 that made a right turn. There were about, I forgot, 300 or so cars that had come up northbound on Route 5. That's kind of irrelevant. No, it's actually 10 to 1. The number of cars that turned off of Old Route 5 times 10 is what goes on 5. So that's just the order of magnitude of the problem. So I was out working in my garden and I heard the screech of tires and I looked up to see this car slowly pulling from Old Route 5 onto 5 and the other car sliding toward it. Just like, it's a happy spring day, I'm just going to drive across this oncoming traffic. Doesn't happen all the time, but I've heard tire screeching before. One time I was actually out there and a car came off the pavement onto the right-of-way, the gravel right-of-way. There's 9 feet of gravel after the asphalt. It was headed right toward me, but it was further down. Going around a car that was trying to turn, but they just are impatient and they want to go on my property to get around. So it's not a U-turn, but it's dangerous. U-turns are illegal. I can't stop people from doing U-turns in my gravel. But it's dangerous. So he actually hit my car doing it once. So all I'm doing is raising an issue that I think something has to be done. I don't know what the solution is, but somebody's going to get hurt. In fact, somebody just did get hurt. So that should be a red flag. So I'll just leave it to you to ask me questions if you like or to discuss what are the solutions. I don't have a solution. I don't know what the plausible solution might be.
Karen.
So I just want to make a comment that we did just get a grant to do a comprehensive village study and plan. Route 5 is going to be part of that study. So we're going to start probably in the fall with that process. So probably the end of 2026 maybe we'll have some data. But we understand the situation. And right now there is more traffic coming off the Route 5 because they did close Alice Holloway's as of Monday. So you're going to see more traffic. But we do understand the situation. And Route 5 being a state highway, it's a little challenging.
Just, I mentioned 40 cars made a left turn. That's about 90 seconds between cars. So that's probably what we're seeing is that volume of traffic is increased from something to this level. It's just anecdotal, but it's an order of magnitude, about 1 a minute or so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Any comments from the public on that? All right, approval of minutes for April 30th.
Move to approve the minutes of April 30 as drafted.
Second.
Do we have anything? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Warrants for treasurer.
I make a motion to approve and execute the warrants to the treasurer upon completion of review.
Second.
Second.
Karen?
So it looks like accounts payable first. Is that what you have in your
Yes.
packet?
Yep.
Okay. Dated May 3rd through May 16th in the amount of $97,722.23. So in this warrant, there is a Wyndham Southeast School District final payment of $20,463.61. So we get a preliminary cash flow, and throughout the year, with the homestead exemptions, that number fluctuates. So then we get our final cash flow, which we just got in February, March. And so we calculated our payments, and my treasurer was like, I'm trying to understand this number. She goes, I think let's just send them this much, because usually we overpay and we get more back. So I said, all right, Kim, I'm like, let's try it your way. So we were short 20,000, and that's the final payment, and that is the reason why we have a fourth payment. So, but it's a learning curve, and you know, it's good experience to see the process. So, passive is our insurance through VLCT, $24,111.50. Simon's is our monthly contracted work. Seems a little high, but it is what it is.
In Casella, that's just, is it the sewer plant?
Yeah, that's the sludge removal. It seemed high this month, because I keep an eye on it, but it seemed like they took out more for some reason. All set with that one? Payroll warrant, May 16th, 2025, in the amount of $21,749.06.
Seems normal.
Normal, yes.
I'm good with it.
Any questions? Anyone? All in favor?
Aye.
Alright. Town manager report.
So I'm gonna report Monday morning was just like one thing after another. So with the help of the highway department and Simon Operations, Joe Tatro, the well pump wasn't working on Monday morning. which meant we had no water going to the storage tank. At that point, we were at 4 days of storage for water. Joe contacted an electrician, Lawrence and Mower showed up to troubleshoot the wiring. They found it was a ground fault, so basically all the wire is like 3-phase, it runs through a conduit in the ground. And somewhere, whether water got into that conduit, and every time that pump tried to pump, start up, the ground fault would just shut it down. It was a project. Got a hold of Lenny Howard, he got the guys down there, they dug the trench. It was determined that we're just gonna run new conduit, so they ran the conduit, it was like 1,000 feet down from the well house to the well pump. And that took 2 days, but they had the pump running yesterday. I was up there with Lenny Howard and Joe, and we were like, and it started up, so it's still running. The storage is better, so the storage tank is filling up, and that was a big, nervous situation. We had a backup generator on the way, because our generator is not hooked up yet, because the gas company insists that we need to bury a 1,000-gallon tank.
Oh, we have to bury the tank?
Yeah,
Why?
and then the tanks at the wastewater treatment plant, there has to be 2 1,000-gallon tanks buried. So they said because of the size of the generators in the BTUs that expel from the tanks, it reduces that if they're buried. Now, I'm working with Power's generator because they didn't mention that when they spec'd everything, and they insist too that we don't have to bury. So I'm gonna challenge Irving and because Irving said if you put them above ground, we're gonna need 4 1,000-gallon tanks down at the wastewater treatment plant, and then 2 up by the ball field. And I'm like, that ain't happening. So I'm working that. It's gonna take a little bit to be diplomatic and understand. And I may, I have the fire department too that I can consult with. But if that generator would have been running, we could have just popped it on and it would have ran the pump. And we would have been all set. The other thing too with the well house, there's a drive. It's a piece of equipment that keeps everything going. I don't really know what it does. Joe said if that fails, it won't come overnight. And that pump won't run either. So I've asked him to quote the drive so we can have a backup in case that fails. The other thing too, and I've talked about it, and Sue Coakley, Planning Commission Chair, knows this, we need a second well in town. Whether it's an abandoned one or we drill a new one, but I need to get the RFP written so we can get an engineer to suss out what the best option is. So. But the well pump is fine, it's running. I even had Green Mountain Power down there, not Green Mountain Well, excuse me, down there to check the well out, and that's fine. And we do have a backup pump for the well.
Yes.
It's sitting in the well house. So we're good there. Then Sunday I had a call on my voicemail, and there was a septic leak noticed on I-91, the overpass, coming from exit 4 into town. And the person who left me the message had known about it for about 10 days, but apparently they had spoken to somebody that knew about it for over a month. So I was like, well, okay, so I know about it, we're gonna deal with it. So get Joe down there. Joe, the break was between Old Depot Pump Station and the I-91, the interstate, about 150 feet down from Old Depot. It's all brush in there, it's thorny and thick, and Joe did his best to get in there. Lenny and Jesse were down there yesterday. They blazed a trail to the leak, the broken pipe, and contractor went in there with a mini excavator. They dug it out this morning, they repaired the pipe, so that's all good. What precipitated, somebody had called the state Department of Environmental Conservation and reported the septic being on the road. The state got a hold of me. Chris Hayes will handle the state at this point because he was at the site today. So he has all the details. He will write the report and send it to the state. We should be okay. But in the future, if anybody smells any septic, sees any green algae, like liquid running down either a state road or a town road, please call my office.
You smell something, see something.
It's like, send me an email. I mean, this is serious stuff, and we got on it as soon as we knew about it. So,
Just PSA, Facebook doesn't count.
right. No, I don't troll Facebook.
Good.
So, so both those situations are handled. Everything's operational.
So where's that line go? Does that line go over to the Putney Inn?
Yeah, it goes across the overpass underneath.
From
Under the
Old,
overpass?
Yeah.
Old Depot Road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
From the pump station.
If you go way down to the end of it, there's a whole electrical box there that I think is.
there's a pump station down at the Putney Inn as well.
I just.
Or I should say Putney
Right
Place.
down Putney Landing
Yeah.
or-
Putney Place.
Yeah.
But it's fixed. You know, again, talking with the fire department, you know, that's, you know, a pipe that's probably been in the ground since, you know, 1977, and we gotta be looking at things like that and maintaining, and, you know, it's an aging system, but it's fixed. Let's see what else. Oh, I was at the pool. The pool. My other nemesis. So I had Brian Tyler up there because we've had a leak over the years and we just couldn't pinpoint where it was. So our pool guy, Rick Pettit, said, do not drain the pool, right? So for the last 2 or 3 years, we haven't drained it. We put it below the skimmers, and every year there's no water in the pool. We're like, all right, there's a leak, right? So, Brian Tyler, there's 8 drains on the bottom of the pool in the deep end, and he popped the covers off, and there is space in between this 8-inch PVC pipe, which is a drain pipe, which goes, you know, to the pump house and anywhere else it can. There's a gap in between that and the floor of the pool, so the water's been leaching down into those holes.
All 8 of them?
Not all 8 pegged, but I was told we should probably fix that before we open the pool. And it looks like it's been patched before because there's like squares of fiberglass. So the gap is pretty significant, and
Brian, any suggestions?
not for a pool guy, but I'm gonna get a hold of, Rick Pettit. His dad put that pool in.
Yeah,
And
it's
see-
the liner again, right?
Well, we did the fiberglass, the whole
Yeah,
fiberglass,
he
yes.
redid it though,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's cracked at the bottom of the ramp again,
of
so.
course.
You know, the water needs to stay in there to keep the pressure, you know, so the walls will stay. But without any water in there, it's hard. But that's a problem right there. I don't know what it's gonna cost till we get a, you know, qualified pool person to look into it. Like I told Brian Tyler, I'm like, listen, pool's opening mid-June, and he's like, oh, no, it's not. Let me go. So,
I mean, what would happen if we opened it?
The water's not gonna stay in.
the water's.
Right, but I mean, we could put more water in it.
No, but here's the thing.
I mean, is it a safety issue? That's what I'm asking.
Well, yeah, if we have to continue to pump water into it, you're either gonna pump it from the brook, which is gonna be dirty most of the time, or you're pumping it out of Putney Central School's well, and we're not gonna do that.
Okay.
We can't do that, because if they run out of water, then
Do that first. Okay.
I think that's a lot to ask, but I think I can talk with a few people and try to come up with a plan, but, I mean, we could take it from the municipal system. I don't
mean, the school
recommend
might be
that
willing
either.
to- Right, the school might be willing to, because they've got a summer camp going on, so.
Yeah, second half of the days at the pool.
Right, without the pool, they don't have that, they obviously don't have a pool, so they have to do something else. So they may be into that, and they may even be into giving us some money for it, since they use it.
Well, they pay for their camp, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me try to get somebody first.
Sure.
Do you think this is the same leak that you've had the last?
I think so, because it doesn't make sense, you know, Brian Tyler saw the water line, you know, and there is a water line because all the leaves just, you know, were sucked to those drains and it just clogged them up. But I thought maybe we could just put some caulking in there and just go with it. That's not.
I sound like my dad. Just put Superflex on it.
But anyway, I don't have an answer right now, but I'm working on it. We have a little bit of money in the fundraising fund, so I think it's gonna take more than what we have. But I'll keep you posted.
Seems like time is even more of an issue than money, perhaps, you know.
I'm not worried about time, because if we don't open mid-June, then it is what it is, right? We open in July, still have time, right? It needs to be fixed.
Mhm.
We've been doing Band-Aids on this pool since I've been here.
And remind us we've talked about this before, but what is the plan for stopping the Band-Aids and coming up with a more,
Money,
viable solution?
it's gonna be money, it's gonna be public engagement, and, I think at some point you're gonna have to consider doing something with that pool.
Like rebuilding it somewhere else, or.
I don't know, you might be able to put a gunite shell in there, I don't know. It'll just
Put
be
a
a
what in
little
there, Karen?
gunite,
I don't know.
they
what that is.
spray it in, it's like a concrete,
Mm.
but it'll make the pool smaller. But I don't know if that's the answer either. I mean, the pool house needs some love too. So. It should probably go on the capital plan.
Yeah. Okay.
And the pool never pays for itself, so.
more people should swim.
But that's the bad news about the pool. But I'll be optimistic that we can open.
I was just waiting for you to get done.
Alright,
For you to get one.
no, I have more. So we're working on the request for proposal for crushing and blasting. I'm working with Lee Chamberlain, Dummerston Highway Foreman. We hope to release it by June 1st. Crushing can start probably right away, and then the blasting won't happen until like October 16th. So, again, you'll see that before it goes out, most likely. Like I said, Alice Holloway was closed first day on Monday. The stop signs at the intersection of Old Route 5 and Carroll Brown Way are operable, they're working. So there's a post on Facebook, for the most part, it's all positive feedback. We did have somebody come into our office and say, when you're sitting at Carroll Brown Way, there's no signage to tell you like south Route 5 or north Route 5, 91 north or anything like that. So I'm not sure if the select board recommends any more signage there. I think we should monitor it and just see what happens.
I mean, there hasn't been signage there for quite some, I mean, the signage is, there's an abundance of signage when you're looking at, from the co-op to the community garden, most of it's faded. And then there's no directions on like how to get to Route 5 or how to, I think actually there's a Route 5 sign in an unfortunate place, which makes it seem like Route 5 is Old Route 5.
Right.
So I think the signage does need to be better, but if we're doing a village, comprehensive village plan, maybe we should put that in there.
Yeah.
Effective signage for that area.
Sounds good. But for right now, I'm gonna just leave the 3 stop signs.
I think 3 stop signs should stay there.
Yeah.
We were talking about doing traffic calming there before, so, and one of the solutions was to put stop signs there, so
Right.
they should just stay there, I think.
It doesn't say that there's 3 stops, does it?
It doesn't say it's a 3-way stop,
Yeah.
probably should.
Right.
Just so people understood that everybody was stopping, hopefully. It's
Well,
hard
stop
when you've
sign
been
is a
driving.
stop
I know, but
sign.
when you've been driving someplace for so many decades, it's hard, you know, like
Right.
people drive right through, so.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know that saying it's a 3-way stop, maybe that was the mistake because people aren't stopping all the time, but I don't know, it'd be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah.
I stopped the other day. And then I crept forward because I couldn't see.
Yeah, the visibility is pretty tough
Yeah.
if you actually stop on the line.
Yeah, I've walked over there and seen people just like not stop on the white line, get to the end of the road and then go. But
Yeah.
it's that way because of a tractor trailer truck has to make that curve, so, or that turn. Hopefully it's less than a year, folks. Green Mountain Power sent an email notification that their subcontractor, Sergeant Electric, is planning on working this Saturday on West Hill. So we'll put a post out on our town Facebook, but I would think they're gonna have signage and traffic control maybe. So just be aware. Notice of public hearing, May 28th, Code of Ethics, Investigation and Enforcement, Ordinance is legally warned at this time. So we will have that, the very first business of the next select board meeting at 5:30. I'll be attending the Vermont City Managers Association Conference in Manchester, Vermont tomorrow and Friday. Next week is a Southern Vermont Economy Summit at Mount Snow on Tuesday, May 20th. If you're not signed up, you probably should do that sooner than later. And
Karen,
then-
are you going to that?
I haven't signed up yet. I'm on the fence.
Yeah,
I know Sue's going.
great. I was just wondering who else was going. It was great. I really, really enjoyed going
It's
last
next
year.
Tuesday, right?
Yes, all day. Yeah, I haven't quite decided yet.
I mean, yeah. We'll be gone Thursday, Friday.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
Tuesday and then Thursday I'm up in Barry for Women Leading Government, so
Okay.
that's a lot of time out of the office. But, I met with the fire EMS officers on Monday, April 28th. We had a great discussion. We discussed inventory and asset management, capital planning for fire and EMS, administrative support, grants, and reviewing the AP Triton recommendations. And from the budget, this fiscal year, we're gonna be upgrading 3 of the PCs down at the station because they're running Windows 10. So we're gonna move ahead with that. But yeah, that's all I have.
That's it? Okay. Any comments from the town manager's report?
Okay, come on. Karen, can you say anything about administrative support? Just what that conversation was about, or?
I can when we get to the other
Okay.
piece,
Great.
because Brian's here too, and
Great,
Len,
great.
so,
Great.
yeah.
Mr. Fairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 3 brief points regarding the town manager's report. The improved well access road should have a gate at the upper end. Now that they've had a backhoe down in there and made it a nice inviting road, we should keep people out.
There's a cable there.
Did you hear that?
There's a cable there, Mr. Fairman.
There wasn't this afternoon.
All right, we'll double check that.
Now, of course, I'm walking by on Sand Hill Road and I look there and I can't see anything. Now, whether there's something farther down the hill, I don't know. Suggestion about the gas supplier demanding buried tanks. Perhaps given that Powers Generator says they are needed, I wonder whether another gas supplier would also demand buried tanks, or maybe that's a way to choose the supplier.
Yeah, I will consider that, Mr. Fairman.
And finally, concerning the closure of Alice Holloway Drive, theoretically it was closed Monday. It was open this afternoon, and I'm wondering. I didn't look. Have the new stop signs on Old Route 5 been uncovered?
Yes.
Yes.
We just say that.
Thank you. That's it.
Moving on, boards, committees, and commissions. We're gonna table A, so equity and inclusion, Swift, that's you.
Hi, sorry, I didn't realize that A got tabled. I have just reached out to Anna Gale, who's going to read the other statement, but I will read the statement written by Jill. Sorry, I just need to pull it up. I wasn't quite ready. Thank you. And I'm sorry, I'm not coming on camera. So May is Older Americans Month, and Jill Hinckley wrote this, who has been the equity member for probably just over a year now. Here we go. All right. Each May, we proudly join communities across the nation in recognizing Older Americans Month, a time to honor the enduring contributions of our older residents and to celebrate the vital role they continue to play in the life of our town. Our older citizens are the backbone of our community. They have served as teachers, business owners, civic leaders, veterans, neighbors, and family pillars. Their dedication helped build and sustain the very institutions and traditions that make our town a special place to live. Through times of challenge and change, they have offered wisdom, compassion, and a steady hand to guide us forward. As a town advisory board, we recognize that our community thrives because of their leadership, their stories, and their service. We are grateful for their countless hours of volunteerism, mentorship, and public engagement. Their voices bring perspective and depth to local decisions, and their presence enriches every corner of our town. This Older Americans Month, we recommit to listening to, learning from, and supporting our older residents. We pledge to foster a town where aging is not only respected, but embraced, where every generation benefits from the experience, insight, and strength of those who came before us. To our older residents, thank you. Your legacy is our foundation, and your continued presence is one of our assets. It is also, thank you, to all the older Americans here in Putney and beyond. It is also Asian American, Native Hawaiian Pacific Island Heritage Month, and Anna Gale has jumped in on here and wrote a statement for us. Thank you so much, Anna Gale. You can go ahead and read it and jump in.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Is my audio working for you all okay? Oh, fantastic. Well, greetings, dear Select Board and members of our community. So my name is Dr. Anna-Gail Kaunka. My pronouns are she, her. I've been a Putney resident since 2019 and a Vermonster this past decade. And as mentioned, this month is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Month. This month is a time to celebrate the diverse cultural practices and rich heritage, as well as to uplift the contributions of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander peoples in our local community and beyond. And so as a parent, I think about our children whose family lines connect us to the Philippine Islands and the importance of learning about their histories and cultural practices, as well as stories and practices different from them. So I appreciate that Signal Pine Play School reached out for our favorite Asian American centered stories when my daughter was enrolled as a toddler in their care. I am thankful to the Putney Central School educators who welcomed me into my son's classroom for Tagalog bilingual story times, and most recently encouraged him to do a class presentation about his family trip to the Philippines this past winter. And I will never forget when my son told me that whilst he was a little embarrassed, he was proud to be Filipino. And so it is in these moments that remind us that the importance of valuing and uplifting identities and stories, often seen or even unseen in the margins, the stories that we share and can truly hear and learn from, so that our children and us can learn about differences that do not diminish. And so our family recently traveled to the Mead Art Museum at the Amherst College, where there's a great exhibit. It's representing art beyond the color line. And our children were excited to meet Asian American award-winning author and illustrator, Grace Lin. And so for me, as an educator and mother scholar, sharing stories of and written by Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders is important in our own household. And so during this time, we also encourage our community to learn and to listen. And an important element of that exhibit is a question I'd like to share with you all during this month, something to reflect and ponder on is, what does it mean to truly observe a person and to depict them and ourselves with love and care? So maraming salamat. Thank you very much for having me share a bit about this, and Swift for inviting me to join you all to share a bit about us and celebrate this month.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna-Gail. That's all we got.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right. Planning Commission, Sue Coakley.
Yes, thank you. I'll stand up. I think you can hear me better that way. Sue Coakley, Chair of the Planning Commission, and this is my monthly report to the Select Board. And I'll begin with first a very happy recommendation to the Select Board, and that is that the Planning Commission nominates Vanessa Long to join the Planning Commission as a member. I mentioned it in my report last month, and we did discuss it at the last Planning Commission meeting, and I'm unanimous about, so given Vanessa's interest, and she's been to 3 of our meetings,
already and even took minutes at our last meeting when our clerk couldn't be there. But she's also contributed significantly already to our discussion of the bylaw update, jumping into that. And she has a good technical background as well as been involved with organizations and takes minutes. I think I mentioned that. And it's very helpful to have her there. So we strongly recommend her as a planning commission member to the select board. I can go on to the rest of my items unless you had any questions or wanted to take any action on that.
Do you wanna just go for it?
Yes.
I make a motion to appoint Vanessa Long to the planning commission. Is there a term limit? Is there terms for that?
The terms are generally 3 years. She's
Yeah.
filling an empty position.
So it's a 3-year term.
I believe it would be a
March.
3-year.
Okay, so I make a motion to appoint Vanessa Long to the planning commission for a period of 3 years ending on town meeting day in 2028.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome.
So I have a question. Did I give you the welcome present yet? No.
No.
I wasn't sure. Okay. This is our welcome to the committee, to your work and to town.
Oh, thank you so much.
Very nice. Great. And that brings us to a full commission.
All right.
We're very pleased.
Yay.
And,
That's deserved. Yes.
Okay, so the largest thing in my report is about the zoning bylaw modernization. We are now in this part of the project. We're actually meeting with the consultant and the project advisory committee to review specific recommendations to update the bylaws. We have 3 of these meetings. The next Planning Commission meeting on June 3rd, and then our July 1st monthly meeting will be going through all of the articles with the recommendations from the Wyndham Regional Commission. And I wanted to make sure that you are all informed and following along here. There's a lot on the table. It is an integrated update, an overall update to the regulations to comply with state law, but also to make them easier to work with, to reduce administrative burdens, make it easier for the public to work with, and to encourage housing and economic development appropriately in balance with natural resource conservation. So the 3 things we looked at at the last meeting was about administration and procedure. And this is going to ways that we can make it simpler and easier for everybody. The big recommendation on that one is basically to move more things to a permitted use where that's possible, to enable the zoning administrator to review things that meet conditions, and every one of the reviews will require a site plan review, which is really simply a very clear statement and depiction of the work that's to be done. It's a more complicated project that requires more than a simple presentation. But we're trying to find ways to make it easier and to reduce the amount of time that to going for the development review board, particularly if things already meet requirements. So there's a number of things related to that. In terms of permits and approvals, I just mentioned that as well. We're trying again to make things simpler. We also looked at the zoning districts. These are all kind of integrated what to do. One of the big innovations that other towns already do that is being recommended is to take all of the districts and look at the permitted or conditional or not allowed uses and put them all in one table. So you could just go down the list of all the districts and types of applications and find out what is permitted, is not. It was enlightening to look at it that way. It's amazing it wasn't done before. We're doing the same thing with density and parking, so you can see what the requirements are by district, and already that brings up things to change that make sense when you look at them. But it'll make it administratively a lot easier, and certainly in updating the bylaws, it's great because you understand what they are relative to each other, and you ask good questions about why this way and why that way.
Can you remind us how many districts we're talking about?
oh dear. Well, there's districts and within them sub-districts, okay? So I think the table has something like 20 lines. Karen, is it something like that between districts and sub-districts? It's in that neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there are main zoning districts, but within them, particular uses. So
Yeah, that's.
it's a having a matrix again allows us to be well educated and to look at it critically, be informed as well, make recommendations. So you'll see, for example, in attachment A, a matrix of density that's currently allowed and then proposed changes. So it gives you an idea, and then these kinds of tables will actually be in the zoning regs, again, as part of a way to ease navigation and review of proposed projects.
Can I just quickly?
Yes.
So there's 6 zoning districts.
Yeah.
They're on this chart.
Yeah.
I remember.
So village residential, rural residential, resource conservation, and multiple use. And there's a map. I didn't give you the map, but there is a map of all these zoning districts, which is also helpful to look at. I'm trying not to overwhelm you with too much information, and maybe I'll make sure you see that next time. So that was an interesting review and something quite supported in the review with the commission and the advisory committee. We're also updating zoning district definitions that better map towards the type of use that they are, versus it used to be defined by the town plan, but we're moving into a slightly different, more stable way of looking at it, the typologies, more like what you just read, and to be consistent with that. Another important thing is adding the concept of cottage clusters or courts. And this is to encourage clustered development, both in the village, but also in rural residential areas. The idea is to not fragment the landscape in the rural areas. It's actually less expensive to do a cluster. There could be shared infrastructure, for example, for construction, and to make those, like, for example, permitted uses. And in the village, allowing that to be as well. Right now, people can add ADUs, but it's actually complicated to add another dwelling on a property. So we're trying to enable things by using these types of new types in districts. We're also trying to simplify things by, for example, folding the theater use into indoor and outdoor recreation, indoor being facilities that allow for congregations, and outdoor, you could have, for example, an amphitheater that would be as part of outdoor recreation, not as a separate thing. Child care facilities, the state actually has 3 different sizes, so we're going to align our zones with those 3 different sizes. We're working out the details of that right now. And the differences are the level of review and parking and so forth. So for a child care home, daycare home, it's very simple, and that's very much like a single family as it is right now. By the time you get to a child care facility, you have multiple staff and parking, it's more significant. So we're working through those details, aligning with the state requirements, reducing minimum parking requirements by district to the minimum possible to align with the state requirements. We're doing away with the term family. Instead of multi-family, we'll use multi-unit or single unit residential, because family is not describes who might be there. We want to describe what the dwelling is, because it might be a household, not a family who's living there, for example. So we're using that language is shifting on the state level. They haven't done it comprehensively. They'll eventually do it all. We're just going to adapt it to be consistent across the regulations. We're making the permit review process for multi-unit ADUs no more restricted than single unit residential dwellings, and that aligns with state requirements. And we're making some specific updates to the Conservation Resource District, the Rural Residential Village districts, moving some conditional uses to permitted uses where that seems appropriate. Again, adding cottage cluster or court and other uses, and we're updating the dimensional standards. So that's the kind of work we've been going on. These are to ease administrative review, comply with state requirements, and facilitate new housing and economic development. The next meeting with the Zoning Bylaw Modernization Project Advisory Committee, we'll be talking about some additional districts, planned residential district, planned unit districts, and planned educational districts, and any changes to those. We'll be looking at the general regulations and special regulations. Under special regulations, we have things like wireless telecommunications cell towers. And at this point, my understanding is we're not changing those because it makes sense to leave them the way they are, but that will be the discussion we're having at the next meeting. At that meeting, we will also consider what, if anything, should we do about energy facility siting as a special regulation. We don't have anything in zoning about that right now, and I've asked Wyndham Regional Commission to help us understand, given current state policy, what is appropriate or not for Putney to include in its zoning regs regarding energy facility siting. So materials for that next meeting, which is June 3rd, will be posted on the 27th of May, so we have a week to review them. And that is the process that we're using. It went very well the first time that we did it. We met for the 2 hours, we covered everything, and had a very good discussion that led to some refinement on the Wyndham Regional Commission side of things. And then the last meeting on July 1st, we'll do the balance of the recommendations. So that's the general schedule. We hope that by mid-July, we will have a first presentation of the full proposed changes. We will have a version of it, and what we will have then is a presentation, an overview to introduce the changes, because reading 200 pages of regulation is not easy, and it's not for everybody. So for the public, we'll be presenting an overview. And in fact, that's what we're doing currently with the advisory committee, providing a high-level look at what are the issues, what do they mean, and talk about them. We will use that same format for our community meetings, which we expect to be in September and October. We'll probably do part of the regulations in meeting 1 and do the balance of them in meeting 2, because it's too much to cover in 2 hours with conversation. And then we'll have a public hearing. At this point, it feels like comfortable that the commission could, by our December meeting, be able to arrive at a set of regulations we would put out for the public hearing. So we have listened to the community meetings, had that input, made whatever tweaks we feel are appropriate based on what we heard, put it out for comment. We would hope to have our hearing then in a 30-day notice in early January. That goes well, we pass them on to you, and the select board would have the option to review them, make changes if you wanted to, or just publish them as you receive them for public hearing. And that'll be up to you. I know you have a lot to do in January, but we will get them to you in January, and then the hearing can be held in a 38-day period once you publish them. So that's what we've landed on all of this. You get an idea of the material that we're covering. In each of these meetings, I'll try to give you a flavor for what the issues are, and you're certainly welcome to attend any of the Planning Commission meetings. The next 2 will be diving into this, and if that's useful to you, you're very welcome. This will land on your desk, so I'm trying to help you come up to speed as we go along. So any questions on that? Okay.
I have comments.
Yes.
So we no longer have a shared zoning administrator. It did not work out. So by default, I'm that person again. So hopefully before these go into effect, we'll have somebody else, because that sounds like more work. I also want to encourage the public and the select board to follow this process, especially the board. You're going to be adopting this document, and if it happens in January, that is not good timing, considering we will be trying to get articles and the budget and prepared the town report. So my hope is that this process will finish a little bit sooner than January. But please follow this process through because it's important. And it's also important for the community to get engaged and have comment.
I do hope that the community meetings will provide a really good forum for that, and we'll have materials out well in advance and try to present them in a high-level way so people understand what is on the table.
I have a question, Karen. When you said, we don't have the zoning, the shared zoning administrator, and you hope that we will because this is a lot more work. Are you referring to adopting these as the work, or that the work of doing zoning after these are adopted is going to be more work?
Correct. Your latter statement right there.
I thought that one of the purposes of this was to make it less work, to make it more streamlined.
Not necessarily streamlined, but some of the things that the Development Review Board are hearing will go to the zoning administrator. So, and we know housing is critical, and there's a lot of people talking about ADUs, and all that will fall on the zoning administrator. You're still gonna need an application for permits to.
Okay, so let me just see if I understand what you're saying. That it's not necessarily that the process is going to be that much more onerous on the town, but we're expecting to have more development because this will make it clear how to do that, and it's the increase in development. I'm trying to figure out.
It's also because the administrative piece, there'll be more administrative permits
Review.
than going to the DRB.
Yes.
So more of those permits will fall on the zoning administrator.
Right.
There's sort of the concept of right to build, and by making things more permitted, right, you want to make it simpler for people to go through, and working with the zoning administrator from the customer perspective
I got it.
Yeah.
is faster, because
Then
otherwise it has to be
working
set
through
up for the DRB to meet.
I've got it to do conditions.
But it does, Karen's absolutely right, everything has to be reviewed, everything requires an application and permit. It may be simple, it may go through quickly, but there may be a couple of meetings, and it will still be the zoning administrator. So this is why Karen is right to bring it up. I mean, if we were to do an impact analysis, I'd say that I think the same amount of work is going to be there for the town, but more of it will fall on the zoning administrator because there are more permitted uses, a little bit more going towards the right to build.
Okay. Thank you so much for that explanation. That's super helpful.
One specific question, has there been any thought to what zones are appropriate for cannabis dispensaries?
No, that would be under special. So that's interesting. I will make sure that we bring it up.
I'm not sure that we're allowed to
Well,
make that distinction unless
I think
they've
we can make
changed.
those conditions.
Unless the state has changed their rules on cannabis, we're not allowed to make zones that they can't be in.
I will ask Wyndham,
I doubt it.
if you would like, I will ask Wyndham Regional Commission to clarify what is possible or required, what's already covered. For example, on wireless telecommunications cell towers, there is a full set of state regulations that basically give that guidance. But other towns have all their own requirements regarding this that align with the state requirements, but they have them nonetheless. And it is suggested as a reasonable thing to have that as a backstop. Towns that don't have them somehow seem to get more attention for cell towers. Now, whether that is, the Wyndham Regional Commission looked into it and they said, there's no harm in having them. they are what the state requires. We suggest keeping them in your zoning regulations. It doesn't change what people have to do. So we're keeping that. At the moment, the proposal is to keep those. What do they recommend about cannabis? I have not asked that question. You may be very well right, Eileen, that there's no role for towns at all to have that in their zoning.
At the time, they were being very top down about it. You couldn't zone cannabis out of your town.
Well, but that wasn't the question.
Yeah.
I wasn't saying zone it out of the town. I'm saying what zone is it appropriate for? And
Yeah.
there's, the zones all have definitions of
Sure.
what uses are appropriate, what are conditional, and what are not.
Right.
I wasn't saying zone it out of the town. I was saying what zones it is appropriate for.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just saying that the state was pretty heavy-handed on the cannabis rules.
It's the same way with wireless communications.
Yeah.
Really is a good example. So I'm kind of new to zoning, and I ask these questions too because I think I want to understand what is appropriate for Putney to have, to be able to make sure the uses are appropriate for us. State requirements, we're a Dillon state, right? We can only do what we have authority to do here. But mirroring the state regulations sometimes can be a good thing, or at least referencing them. I don't know. Good question. Just like energy facilities. I wasn't sure. It's not currently in our zoning. State policy has gone back and forth about whether or not towns need to have policies in place and what those policies are. So I've asked Wyndham Regional to please make sure that we've given it appropriate consideration in zoning. And if it's not in zoning, is there something else that we should be doing? Because we are a place of interest for energy facilities. These are good. I mean, this is the moment to bring up the questions, really. And if you all have other questions, bring them up. Like I said, the planning commission meetings are good discussions. We bring these up, and you're very welcome to be part of that. You can see that they're on the calendars, the first Tuesday. They're at the library, and we welcome these kinds of questions there. This is, again, a good time to bring them up.
And Sue has her own email. pcchair@putneyvt.gov.
One other observation that has troubled me for a long time because it seems to be impacting development particularly in the downtown area, which is what I consider to be somewhat disproportionate parking requirements for businesses versus residential. So I appreciate that you guys have taken on a Herculean task, and I don't want to nitpick at it, but I hope that's part of the process of what's being looked at.
Yes, we had that discussion
Thank you.
last Tuesday. So we are taking a look at that. And the basic discussion was saying Putney has a parking challenge, right? And so we can't put it on individual property owners necessarily to solve that. There is going to be so much on-street parking that is necessary, to support businesses, for example. So we are giving that some thought, guided by Wyndham Regional Commission about what that is. And once again, it's brought up now for maybe the third time tonight, the comprehensive village plan will be looking at parking. And are there ways in which parking can be optimized? And what other solutions at least might be put on the table for consideration and planning. So yeah, parking is part of that as well, in addition to zoning.
Thank you.
All right, so that's my report on zoning. That was the biggest part of it, and hopefully you will find that helpful. And there's materials posted that say more about that. So I'm following up now on the Housing Needs Assessment Action Plan. We want to make that all work, and one of the things you all approved was a BCRD facilitated housing collaboration meeting, which was held on the 14th of April. The Planning Commission played a good role in trying to help that meeting land. And we received the report just last Friday from that. And I provided in my report just the really top-level executive summary, which is to say that there were some action priorities for collaboration that the group prioritized in the meeting. And this is in the report, what BCRD reported. So some of it was like an action list, like asking the task force to provide input on our zoning updates, for example, and they have been invited. Applying for grants and coordinating with the task force for doing that for the Planning Commission. Defining the housing coordinator role, which is one of the things Planning Commission is doing, again, talking to the task force about that, laying the groundwork for a housing fund. The Housing Solutions Task Force is doing some work on that, and I'm informing that and helping them connect to people and resources. Creating a roadmap of 5-year housing project using housing needs assessment and what are the common goals. So we do have a goal framework that came out of the housing needs assessment. We haven't figured out how we're going to all work together. That would be the select board, the task force, the housing committee, and the commission. So we have a process for how we can meet together. We at least have a jumping off point of schedule and implementation plan of things to do that we can talk about and add to that. Things from the Housing Solutions Task Force, though they were part of creating that agenda. I mean, they were at the table with us when we were writing the housing plan and strategy. So their recommendations are reflected there. They may have other things too. Having quarterly meetings with those groups, so somehow for that to move forward, quarterly reports from these meetings produced and shared. That's another priority that came out of that. And then BCRD said at a high level there were 4 things that they recommended: that we identified shared goals and move in the same direction, clarify and define roles and responsibilities, have a regular connection and check-ins, and continue our trust-building collaboration and navigating conflict. I will bring all of this to the Planning Commission at our next meeting, June 3rd. That'll be another item that we'll have on, just to recommend this and discuss how we might move this forward. And it will be interesting to hear from the select board, their thoughts about that. I'm reaching out already directly, working with the task force as we have been. I attend all their meetings. And so do other members of the Planning Commission, many of them. And the advisory committee, what will be their role. So this report just came out Friday. I just want to say it's important. It's providing a good direction. I think we all need to think about it. The Planning Commission certainly is already working on these issues and inviting participation, but there may be other new forms and structures for this. And I think that we need to have a way to think about that. It's maybe not the place here, but I wanted to bring it up as an important thing to do. I think it was a really great meeting. I thought it was a good sharing, and it was trust building. I think people came out with new understandings, and I thought it was very worthwhile. And I appreciate VCRD doing this, and I thank them. And in fact, it's a gift to us from them. They use their MTAP funds to provide this to Putney. So I think it's important that we appreciate that. I'll move on. The good news on the housing coordinator services, shared services that I've talked about before, and as a recommendation to be able to provide support to do the housing renewal, renovation in town, not only to make it more affordable, more livable, but also to expand it for we can have more people per household or more people living in now a multi-unit dwelling. But the idea is to work with another community. I met with, or talked with Gary Fox from Rockingham. He's a development director there. He is interested in working together with Putney to put a grant together to create what this would be, to test and pilot it, and assess how we could expand it to be a shared service in an ongoing way. The grant program that I was aiming for, the Environmental Justice for New England project, has been put on hold. It was funded by the EPA's Environmental Justice Program the day after Earth Day. The federal administration put that program on hold, and by mid-May had basically let go of everybody working on that and has not and canceled all of the grant funding. So that means Environmental Justice for New England is on pause. They didn't get to fund any of the projects that they came in February, but they are looking for other ways that they can move forward. That was $48 million. They may not be able to replace the $48 million, but I do believe that they're looking at philanthropic sources to be able to backfill it. But while they do that, while they look for money, I plan to work with Gary Fox in Rockingham and also the task force and others to create materials that could be presented to philanthropic funders, including the Vermont Community Foundation, for example, to see if we can get the funding that we need to test run the shared housing coordinator services and figure out and the qualified contractors network to basically provide the support that we need to meet the housing goals that we've set. So little setback, maybe gave me a little more breathing room because otherwise the grant was due already, like today. But it's still on track and we will move forward. So that's my report on that. And we do have the 2 new grants, the Comprehensive Village Plan and the Putney Landing Walkway. I will be making a plan to figure out how to move those things forward. There are ways to coordinate them, certainly at least in public engagement. There may be ways because this is, you're talking about infrastructure across Route 5, we're talking about the walkways in the Comprehensive Village Plan. I will consider how we can be efficient in public engagement to do those things. And I'm actually meeting with our new commissioner this week to begin to map out pathways for the Comprehensive Village Plan to move forward, public engagement. We will certainly want to use a project advisory committee. We put that in the grant proposal as we did for the housing needs assessment and for the zoning. So we'll have more on that at my next report. And as you know, we're meeting June 3rd, July 11th. You'll see our updated project schedule for the ZBM project is an attachment, and a list of, should you be interested, resources regarding zoning. So there's a page, and it's in your PDF. You can click the links about that zoning map, this district map, for example. It's all there, and you can reference it and how people can provide comments to the Planning Commission. That's what I have.
Thank you. Any comments from the select board?
Just continue to say thanks for doing all of this work. But I'm glad you have a full commission now. That's good.
Mr. Kramer?
Mr. Chairman, first I second what the previous speaker just said. Congratulations to Chairwoman Coakley on a superb report. Current enthusiastic consideration of potential accessory dwelling unit is overlooking that water and sewer allocations or septic designs of such properties may have to be enhanced, may or may not currently be feasible, and should be planned. So I'm suggesting that our Planning Commission consider how they might factor these considerations into the town plan, because it could easily be what enables a particular accessory dwelling unit to sink or swim. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on, select board new business. Emergency Management Director.
Whoops, you have a hand up.
Well, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Hello. I'm very pleased with the report overall, and wanted to express that we have been in tremendous discussion about water and sewer allotments, and hopefully part of the zoning, and it may be that we need to go to the state with this, will allow for some shared septic in areas that are not conducive to town sewer. And we also, as the Housing Solutions Task Force, have been talking a lot about expanding the neighborhood development area to go all the way to the school and to River Road, so that we in this comprehensive plan can vision where more housing can feasibly go in the future and utilize the zoning appropriately. So that I asked the select board to go through and read those things and look very hard at the sewerable lines and the opportunities where sewer may be expanded in the future and where water can be brought in. so that we can be visioning forward more than just 2 years, but 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and that we also be talking to the employers and creating housing and that supports our employers and revitalizes the community in both ways with housing and business. So I thank all of you for all your hard work.
Thank you. All right. Emergency Management Director recommendation, or recommended appointment. Karen?
Yeah, so Eileen Tulloch is the Emergency Management Director by default, and she's acting as Select Board Chair. She's no longer the chair. I've met with Len Howard III on 2 occasions to ask if he would be interested. Len and I are reviewing the local emergency management plan together, which the short form is due by June 1st. So we will have that ready for May 28th. So basically, Emergency Management Director, it's all about community preparedness, local emergency management planning, local hazard mitigation planning, emergency shelters, preparedness for disaster, weather and natural, and a lot of other things. So Len has expressed interest. He lives in Putney and he has the qualifications to lead our community as an emergency management director. It is my recommendation that the select board consider the appointment after you speak to Mr. Howard, and appoint him as the emergency management director for the town of Putney. Len Howard is in the room if you have questions for him.
Let's hear it, Len.
Good evening. Karen covered it. We're reviewing and updating the plan. Once we get that done, what I want to do is there's shelters in town that are identified to be used. I want to visit those, and I would like to have Red Cross come in and look at those shelters as well in the event that we ever need to use them. Red Cross is aware when they come in and they actually fill out a form of their own and they keep it on file to know if we call them and say, hey, we need to open a shelter, they know what they're coming to and what's going to be there. So those are some of the things that we're going to start working on. But like Karen said, it can be most anything, and we, it's trying to be prepared. And I feel fortunately, through my career, I've got some contacts throughout the state in the event that we ever do have an emergency that I can reach out to for assistance as well. So, thank you.
And Fire Chief Brian Harlow is in the room as well. I know there's been discussion, throughout. I don't know, do you want to speak to this at all?
Yeah, I mean, Len joined the fire department, so he's tied up with us now as well, so that creates kind of a good back and forth, which makes it a little easier. So a lot of experience. I think it's a good fit. Probably gonna have a hard time finding somebody with more qualifications than him that lives in town, so.
Right.
I think he has more qualifications than I do.
That's a good start.
And me.
I hear a motion to approve Len Howard III.
Oh, you have a hand up.
Elizabeth? Or is that up from before?
Might be up from before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. I support that decision. I feel like he's excellent. Just thank you.
Thank you. I hear a motion to appoint Len Howard III as the Emergency Management Director for the town of Putney.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Len.
Thank you.
This is gonna be great.
All right, moving on.
Now I can sleep at night. That's a joke, people.
SFY 26, Municipal Roads Grant and Aid Program, letter of intent. Karen?
Yeah, so in your packet is the annual Municipal Roads Grants and Aid Program, letter of interest to participate in the program for fiscal year 2026. The program allows the town $31,875 to implement best management practices in accordance with the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation Municipal Roads General Permit. The state will fund $25,500. The local match from the town is $6,375. The letter of interest is due May 23rd. Work, as seen on most of our dirt roads, is ditching and material and upsizing culverts where needed. And so basically it's attempting to shed the water off of the roadway so we don't have the washouts that we've been having with these major rainstorms. It's my recommendation the select board accept the letter of interest to participate in the grants and aid program.
Discussion from select board.
I move we approve the letter of intent and authorize the town manager to sign as the representative.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Alright, use of alcoholic beverages on town properties. Roger?
I think we're finally down to something that we can, this has to go through the same ordinance process of being publicly noticed. The only thing missing from this draft, I didn't get into it, is the waiver fee, which would be an additional sentence onto the end of Article 4, the penalty, saying that if the person agrees to pay a waiver fine of $25, we'll agree not to prosecute.
Yeah, so once it goes to Superior Court, right?
Yeah, just be another sentence on the end of that. What we publish is a summary. So I think we could go ahead and publish and just, because we can actually amend the language right up to the point of final adoption. So I think I've got, the copy of my computer has the extra sentence, I just didn't send it to Karen yet. But I can circulate that momentarily, but I would like to get the process moving. The biggest concern is just that we have clarity really as to the use of the ball field.
I have a question, Fletcher. What is I'm just trying to understand the incorporated or unincorporated association, publicly recognized organization. What does one have to do to be that?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, Vermont law recognizes unincorporated associations as a legal entity, but we didn't want somebody to just get all his buddies together on a Friday night and say, hey, let's be an association and get a permit.
Right.
We wanted something more than some track record showing that they actually were a community organization of some kind if they're going to get a permit.
So what does it mean to be a publicly recognized organization?
Say, oh yeah, you're one of those guys. That's about it. I mean, public, you don't register anywhere. I mean, it's an unincorporated association, but if you have been active in town, if you're visible, if you walk in through the door and say, hey, I'm the representative of an association that none of us or the town manager has ever heard of, we're probably not going to approve the permit. But, if you've been doing work in town and visible, then we'd probably know about you. I mean, it's a little loose. I'll give you that.
So it's whether we recognize it as an association, as an organization.
I don't know, say, for instance, the winning team in the baseball competition wanted to have, a party down at the ball field.
Mm-hmm.
Are they a
Or the
recognized
men's
association?
softball league,
Yeah, I mean, you'd probably say, okay, just keep a lid on it and have a good time.
Okay.
Anyway, so I'm asking that, well, or I'll move that we approve this ordinance and request that the town manager proceed with publishing the summary so we can get it on track to actually be finally adopted.
Yeah, so, so Karen, this is kind of what I was telling you, that, so basically, it's on the agenda, so we've done that. We can approve it, it has to be entered into the minutes, we post it in the public places, we put it at notice in the newspaper record.
Yeah.
And then if people want to appeal it, they have 44 days, and then it becomes a law, it becomes active after 60. I don't know why there's a difference, but that's what it is. So that's basic. We don't have to have a public hearing for regular ordinances. So, I make a motion to approve the, or adopt the ordinance on controlling the use of alcoholic beverages on town property.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, you did not call for public comment.
Sorry, Mr. Crammond, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, there is a typo in this proposed ordinance stating, pursuant to the provisions of 24 VSA section 2291-18, possession by any person of an open container of alcoholic beverage in any public place is prohibited. 24 VSA section 2291-17, not 18, actually authorizes the town of Putney to regulate or prohibit possession of open or unsealed containers of alcoholic beverages in public places. In addition to noting this typo, I have 4 questions about this proposed ordinance that I'll ask one by one. First, why does it not also prohibit possession of unsealed containers of alcoholic beverages in public places, as per 24 VSA section 2291-17?
I'm not sure where the possession of an open container, as you would prefer it said unsealed as opposed to open?
Well, I'm simply saying that the statute says to prohibit or to regulate or prohibit possession of open or unsealed containers. And I know there may be a good reason why unsealed is omitted, but I also know it could be have been overlooked. So I'm raising the question as you were drafting an ordinance.
I'll look at the statute and I mean, part of the problem with legal writing is it's so fond of redundancy, which makes it hard to read, but there may be daylight between open and unsealed. I mean, to me, an unsealed alcoholic beverage container is one that can't demonstrate that it paid the tax on an alcoholic beverage, but they could be the same thing. I have no problem adding those 2 words.
Mr. Chairman, if the speaker has finished. My second question is, why does the ordinance not also prohibit consumption of alcoholic beverages in public places, as per 24 VSA section 2291-18?
If you can get it out of a sealed container, I guess.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I don't understand the answer.
Yeah, how do you consume it if you can't take it out of the container? I mean, there's a point at which yes, I agree, we could put consumption in too. I think if we prohibited having an open container, we've pretty much prohibited consumption, although I suppose somebody might be walking around with an open container with no intention of consuming the contents, but I don't know how they can consume it if they don't open it.
Mr. Chairman, the reason I asked the question is because these are actually two separate municipal powers, 17 and 18. And if we don't invoke the second power, I'm wondering, not speaking as a lawyer, but speaking as one who's accustomed to working with lawyers, whether we may be opening an opportunity for a defense attorney to present a creative defense. But of course, I'll leave that for Attorney Proctor to take under advisement. Third,
I think if you can find a defense attorney to represent you in trying to avoid a $50 fine, I think your the cost of defense would be much higher than the penalty.
well, once again, sorry, I apologize for interrupting. Once again, I'm simply putting it on the record. Third, stating that a permit issued under this article will not constitute a license for the sale of alcoholic beverages. Why does it not advise unlicensed applicants for such permits to consult the State of Vermont Division of Liquor Control regarding a license for sale and/or consumption of alcoholic beverages?
I didn't consider that was our job.
It's not really part of the ordinance, not the purpose of the ordinance to inform people of other laws.
The reason I mentioned it is because the sort of people we're talking about here who are an association who walk in and who are not licensed may be unaware of the unparalleled sway of a liquor inspector. I used to work in the hospitality field where I was thoroughly trained in personal liability for not applying the liquor code. So I'm once again putting that on the record. Finally, and this one I'm sure the gentleman will say is a fine point, but nevertheless, why does this ordinance state that a permit issued under this article will not shall not constitute a license, as in typical legal drafting?
I'll say that I was advised to stop using shall because it can be confusing. Will is more forceful.
Thank you. Once again, I wish to raise these matters so they would be addressed in a public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fairman.
Are we all good with that vote? I'm fine with the ordinance as it's been written.
I think perhaps Mr. Fairman's point about or unsealed is well taken. I'll look at the statute. But I think we basically got the bones of it. Let's get it in process.
Sounds good.
We vote to approve it.
I think we did.
We already did. We want to do it. We can do it twice.
Tidying up. Okay.
All right. Regulating the disposal of solid waste ordinance. Fletcher, that's you again.
Yeah, this one is more of this is the opening round of trying to get something on the books, so I don't expect us to necessarily approve this now, because it goes on at some length and I think is worthy of consideration. The problem we have in town is the only requirement for the town in regard to solid waste is to be a member of the solid waste management district. We've met that requirement. We've fulfilled all our obligation under the law. But that leaves us, Wyndham Solid Waste isn't going to come into town and tell somebody they can't throw tires over the bank, which I guess, as you know, is my current concern, that tire dump. This ordinance, this proposed ordinance, this draft, stops way short of going after something like that aggressively. What it would do is allow us to put up a sign that said, you're subject to a fine if you throw a tire over this bank. And I've walked by there's stuff, recent stuff in there. There are people chucking things in there. So I would really like to be able to put up a sign that said you can get fined if we catch you throwing something down here. It's not going to clean up the dump. And the only way to really put teeth in it to do that is to put in a provision for a continuing violation, that every day is a continuing violation and that you get a new fine every day. And we should consider whether we're willing to go there, but that seemed pretty heavy-handed to me.
And this is not town property, this is private property?
It's private property, but if you look down there, I'm surprised the state doesn't react to the fact that there's clearly water flowing out of that tire dump into a stream.
We're talking about the one on Old South Road.
Old Route 5. And plus, any tire dump like that, anybody knows, is a mosquito factory. That's a health problem. So, I think we've got enough to get more aggressive about it if we want to. But the stuff the state sent around said they think that tire dump has been a dump since the 1940s. So, and I have no idea what the private landowner might think of it.
Can I make a comment? We had discussed this property, and I had found information that there was a state fund that could potentially assist with cleanup. I reached out to my contact at the state of Vermont, and because it is private property, that money can't be used, but instead, Frank, who's young and ambitious and aggressive, has opened up a complaint at the state level, and they will now be investigating that property. I also want to remind people that we do have appointed health officer and a deputy health officer, and we need to consider whether those roles are part of this piece of property. And it is private. If you're gonna write an ordinance for one piece of property in town, I would be careful. And the second thing is, with ordinances, you need enforcement. So who is doing the enforcing is my question.
Right. Yeah, so the one thing that I'm not sure I like this ordinance at all, but one of the things that I noticed right off is that it says that the disposal requirements, no one in town can dispose of solid waste outside of the district, which means that if you have a service like Casella, for instance, doesn't necessarily bring to that solid waste district. They bring it to some single stream thing wherever they do their thing. So it would make those services automatically illegal in town, which I don't think is what we would want to intend, with the intent of the ordinance.
It doesn't say you can't dispose of it outside the district. It says you gotta dispose of it in compliance with the Vermont Waste Management Statute and the rules of the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District, or this ordinance. But the intent certainly isn't to put Casella out of business.
Well, that's how I read obligations and prohibitions. Every person shall be responsible for proper disposal.
Right.
And they should not be doing it outside of the. So,
okay.
That's how I read it.
Yeah, I'll try to clarify that.
Elizabeth?
Yes, I think Karen and I have been looking at some of the same things. There's a lot of money available for brownfield cleanup, and Putney happens to be in a hot red area, Brattleboro and Putney, and maybe this money, you would have to give up some of that land, would be part of the deal if the private landowner could not pay for the cleanup And I think it's something Soundview is probably looking at right now as well, because that diesel spill is going all the way into the Long Island Sound. So there is quite a bit of money available, and we are probably going to be heading into a pretty big cleanup of the Sackett's Brook below the dam. But if there's a way to get this landowner who's had a chronic problem support in getting that cleaned up, maybe it could be wrapped into the same project.
Yeah, I think my preference, just speaking personally, I'm not real keen on going in with guns blazing. I'd much rather go in with, look, this is a problem and we may have a solution. See if we can form an alliance rather than a standoff.
Oh, I'm not suggesting a standoff. I'm suggesting a way to support. If, obviously there could be a financial restriction and inability to take care of it and a desire to all at the same time. And how can we, through investigating funding that might be available, support this cleanup happening?
Good.
Do you want us to look this over?
Yeah, I think we need to come back to this a few times. It is a complicated subject. This ordinance isn't written to specifically target one property, although the example of it certainly motivated it. But it has to be more applicable than just that. This is exactly the process of, chew it over and see what makes sense. I think this one's going to take a few rounds before we're comfortable with it.
Okay.
You have something, Karen?
Is this something you want on your agenda for May next week? May
What's
21st?
already on the agenda?
This?
No, what do we have so far on the agenda? I know I gave you two things.
Oh, yeah, you're the only one that gave me anything.
Nice.
So, question is, do you want this on the agenda for next week?
You want some more time to look at it? Or you want to back up?
Do I want to what?
Or you guys want to get into it?
Next week?
Yeah, I think that's a little soon.
Yeah. Yeah,
Some other stuff to
I
go.
think next regular meeting.
May 28th, we have the public hearing. If I can fit one in, I'll try.
Mr. Fairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, public information has been made public that Soundview Paper completed the environmental cleanup and mitigation of the diesel spill on Mill Road beside Sackett's Brook. So it may be that there's no longer a problem there. I'm not saying for sure, but this is what I have read in the news media. Second, regarding that tire dump, the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation website lists a number of companies that will remove tires. None is in Vermont, but they're all listed there. And it may be that it would be worthwhile asking them to provide a quote on how much they would charge to do it, because it may be they're making money on recycling such that they would not charge that much to get those tires out of there. So I simply take the liberty of suggesting, look at the DEC website, contact these companies, and ask them if they'd like to come take a look and quote on on getting the tires out. Who knows what we'll find out? Thank you.
Thank you.
I would, it's worth saying this is private property. We may have a problem with what's flowing out of it, but first and foremost,
We don't know.
landowner is the person who would have to be asking for that. Unless if we can form an alliance, so much the better. But right now, that's not our role.
Well, with the state involved at the moment, we may be able to form that alliance with the state and the homeowner, but at this
Ideally, if we can all get together to solve the problem, that's by far the best approach.
time will tell.
Anything else from anybody for this?
Good.
Okay, moving on. Establishing and implementing a program to charge Mitigation rates. Fletcher.
This also has been hovering for a while, and this is just foolish of us not to have something on the books that authorizes us primarily to bill insurance. You know, if somebody rolls a car over on Interstate 91 and we have to send a fire truck and a bunch of emergency responders out there, and there's a source of compensation for the cost to the town of doing that, I think it's silly of us not to pursue it. We have been, well, Eric has been talking to a representative of what is really just a billing company that will handle the billings, but they want to see an ordinance that authorizes us to bill. So we need to get something on the books. This is, I cut it into two pieces. It originally was a much longer thing that included all the dollar figures for each thing. It's, you know, sort of a menu. My preference is to have the ordinance authorize us to bill, and then we'll set the rate by policy. Because as we're becoming really familiar, adopting an ordinance is an arduous process. Amending an ordinance is the same process. So what I really am trying to do is have the ordinance say authorize us to bill, and then the policy set the rates. And then we can work with the fire department to see whether these numbers make the sense that it was the billing company, I think, that first suggested them, said that those are the rates that are sort of middle of the road in your area. So, but it may well be that we have some special services that we think should be billed differently, but we ought to be looking at that. We can start out with what they gave us on that side, that's the policy side, but I'd really like to get the ordinance in place.
So these are the numbers that they are willing to work with.
That's what they will, how they say, I don't know, they feel comfortable, they'll bill the insurance company.
Yeah.
We can fluctuate it 10% up or down.
Okay.
But that's what if it's higher than 10%, they're not willing to work with us because I guess their rates and, you know.
They're higher than 10%, lower than this, or?
We can go higher or lower with those.
Okay.
10%.
Yeah.
And that's their margin.
Okay.
But if we go higher than 10%, they don't want to work with us because they don't have good success with this insurance company collecting.
Oh, I see.
So
they these numbers are numbers that they feel comfortable.
They have a good success rate.
Gotcha.
They want to be a billing company.
Right.
They want, you know, and what they would give to us, what they bring to the table is, there's a gazillion insurance companies out there and they all want everything done their way.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys, what they're providing us is the service of knowing all those companies and being able to file a claim in a manner that the insurance company is likely to pay. I did finally, it wasn't real obvious, but I finally managed to dig through the paperwork, and their fee for doing it is 23%. So, you know, that's, but it's also a cancelable agreement, and I can't find anything in the paperwork I've looked at so far that requires it to be that they are our exclusive agent for billing. So if there's something that they don't want to handle and we think we can do a better job, or we've got somebody else who says they can do a better job, I think we have the latitude to go elsewhere. If we submit a claim through them and then pull it back, then they expect to get paid something. But if there's nothing that requires them to be our exclusive billing agent. So, and again, it's just, we gotta get something off the ground here, because we're sending our people out and spending their time and expending town resources and letting a perfectly clear existing opportunity to get some reimbursement
Yeah.
just drift by us.
Okay.
I have a comment. So for the record, we do have a service reimbursement ordinance for the fire EMS department.
Do we have to rescind that one?
Well, it was 1977.
Yeah, but do we have to rescind the ordinance or?
Yeah, well, the rates on it, they won't work with us.
Right, no, I
Yeah.
understand that, but procedurally,
Oh.
do we have to
Procedurally,
rescind that one before we
Right,
adopt
so
this
I
one?
wanted on record, we do have an ordinance for service reimbursement.
Is it in there? Do we know what the title of it is?
It may not be in there.
No.
No.
And do you know, is the procedure for repealing an ordinance as bad as the procedure for adopting an ordinance?
I don't think there
No,
is
I
anything.
So we could make
I think we
it part,
can rescind whatever we want to and
we could do that at the same time we get to the end point of adopting this. We could simultaneously repeal the
Right.
preceding one that's overriding.
The other comment I want to make is there are other companies. There is one in Pennsylvania that I had a referral to. So, I mean, if you want to check it out, great. I mean, I won't jump on the first, third-party billing. And my other point I want to make is with this ordinance, is it across the board, or are we picking and choosing who we're going to be billing?
Well, the ordinance covers everybody. It covers every potential situation. There may well be situations where we decide we don't want to pursue reimbursement, but the ordinance doesn't limit us. I mean,
So back to my original question a few weeks back when we talked about this, who is making that decision?
probably you and the fire department.
So I think in our ordinance we have in place now,
Is there language in this draft that states that, Fletcher?
in the
No.
ordinance or in the policy? So there's two pieces here.
There's also nothing in this ordinance that requires us to bill everything. It authorizes us to bill. We can bill what we want, but we're not required to bill everything. But, if we're gonna make a decision not to bill, I would hope there'd be a conversation between the fire department and the town manager's office.
So, I mean, generally what we're trying to do is we're trying to get money out of the insurance companies, not necessarily somebody who doesn't have insurance.
I think in the past,
Correct.
what we have in our other ordinance, it was that town residents would not be billed
Okay.
unless they were found at fault. Example, they started a forest fire that, caused us to need resources or a DWI or, an accident.
Mhm.
But I think that was at the discretion. But I think town residents were exempt from being billed. They were kind of pushing this towards the interstate.
Well, and this also isn't just limited to motor vehicles.
Correct.
Your house burns down and there's insurance available, and by God, up until the time it burned, you were a Putney resident, we might submit a claim to insurance if there's a way to get because it's a lot of hours and a lot of equipment involved in a house fire. So there's an insurance fund available that we could get some reimbursement. I don't have a problem going after that.
Yeah, I think that when we look a closer look at the policy, we may want to limit it to insurance companies,
Yeah.
not
Oh, yeah.
individual people.
Len?
Fletcher, I would look into putting your fee structure on an appendix of the ordinance. That way, if you want to change your fee structure, you don't have to go through the whole ordinance process.
I looked at that, and we had an example that did that, and I just wasn't comfortable that calling it an appendix made it enough separate from the ordinance, so I just broke it out as a separate policy, but the idea is the same, make it so that we can operate as we need to.
I read this through it, I'm good with it, so should I make a motion?
Do we want to add, do you want some different or suggest some different language?
Has everyone read it?
I've read it.
Has everyone read it?
I've read it.
The
It's
ordinance,
a question.
the ordinance is a page long, I mean.
Yeah, it's not about so the policy, I think
The
for
policy.
language in the policy, I think we should look at the policy maybe at our next meeting, at the
Work
May
work session.
21st.
But the ordinance, again, takes 60 days to take effect, assuming somebody doesn't
Yeah.
file a petition, and it's pretty straightforward. So I'm gonna make a motion to adopt the ordinance establishing and implementing a program to charge mitigation rates for the deployment of emergency and non-emergency services by the fire department for services provided / rendered by / for the Putney Fire Department.
Before we do that, we'll take public comment. Mr. Fairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are several items in this, unmentioned items in this ordinance that frankly are quite concerning. First, residents, either through their property taxes or through their landlord's property taxes, are already paying for the Putney Fire Department. So what we seem to be saying is, you've paid for the Putney Fire Department, but now you can pay a second time. Maybe we can recover from your insurer, which raises the question, I don't know whether insurers actually cover billings from fire departments. And that's, it seems to me, is something you said you should ascertain before you saddle property owners in Putney with the possibility of facing this 23% company, which is actually a billing and collection agency, coming after them for the money when they've already paid their taxes. Now, another question that arises here is mutual aid, which is very common here, where Putney goes on a call to, say, Dummerston or Westminster. Are we going to bill in Westminster or in Dummerston? The answer clearly is we cannot, because our ordinance applies only within the town of Putney. Then people can say, well, wait a minute. You bill people if they live in Putney, but you don't bill people if they live in Dummerston or Westminster. Is that actually legal? And I'm not going to give you legal advice, but I'm certainly going to ask the question. So it seems to me that you are adopting this ordinance right now with a number of unanswered questions that I have just raised. Now, of course, I cannot influence your doing so, but I'm putting on the record that you have not dealt with the question of residence, of mutual aid, of what insurers actually insure, and whether it will simply entail this billing company simply collecting 23% and going after, as a collection agency, a person whose house has just burned down for the cost of fighting the fire, which was covered by property taxes of the town of Putney and of the other towns that responded, as they most likely would for a structure fire, to mutual aid. This, at this point, is quite frankly half-baked. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fairman.
I need a second to my motion.
Second. I mean, I think the mutual aid issue is interesting, but mostly a red herring. I mean, if somebody's house in Dummerston burns, they already have one of these ordinances. We can work with Dummerston on how to apportion it.
They do what I don't believe for going to a house fire and billing, a
Yeah.
town resident.
And that's the thing about, we're not obligated
Just
to bill
authorizes us,
everybody.
Yeah.
So. it
Is
just
billing the insurance gonna affect the homeowner?
That's probably not. If you get in a car accident, your car insurance goes up, but if your house burns down, your house insurance, for one
Your
thing,
house is gone.
the thing that was insured is now gone. But it doesn't, homeowners rates don't work the same way the car insurance rates do.
Len, you have some background on this. Anything you want to offer?
I know we mostly charge for either hazardous material incidents or car accidents. We didn't charge for structure fires or things like that. We just mostly motor vehicle accidents. And as far as a town resident, the only way that we would send the town resident a bill is if they received a traffic violation from an accident or something like that. Other than that, we didn't charge residents.
We're just, the interstate is where we're spending time out there assisting state police because they're short-handed or anything, hazardous cleanup of oil spills, if they have that are caused by the accident. So this is, revenue for the town. Karen?
I have one more question. So throughout this document, I see fire department, but it does not mention EMS. So are we excluding them or?
No.
EMS at this point is part of the fire department.
Yeah, I mean, right now we call it the fire department, but it's fire department and EMS.
Yeah, we could
We've
certainly.
been talking about renaming it, right?
Mr. Fairman?
Mr. Chairman, I'm simply going to underline what you said a few moments ago, where you said, actually, it is about responding to accidents on the interstate to do hazmat mitigation and assisting the state police and so on. This ordinance is as broad as it possibly can be. It applies to every call that the Putney Fire Department goes to. Now, if you're really concentrating on the interstate, I would suggest that it is a good idea to say what you're actually doing, because what you're doing here is writing yourselves a blank check, where you've also said that that enforcement will be discretionary. Now, this raises a very interesting question of whose discretion is it to enforce an ordinance? Does not an ordinance apply uniformly to everyone? And the only discretion would be if it went before a court of law or similar forum where a third party would say discretion can be exercised or not. You are opening a can of worms here, because you're framing it as broadly as possible, and yet you're really thinking about what happens on the interstate, which of course is perfectly valid. But if that's what it is, say so. And if there is discretion, say so in there that there is discretion. Make the discretion part of the ordinance so that people will know that discretion is possible, which means you will have to have a mechanism of appeal, which is also not now in there. Now, all I can do is offer these observations, which I am putting on the record for the simple reason that now we know what you knew and when you knew it. Thank you.
I'm confused.
Well, we're authorizing. We're not. I still don't have a problem with this.
The interstate and hazmat, that's an example, it's
Yeah.
probably where we use it the most,
Right.
but,
It could have been the paper mill.
and it was used.
Yeah, it was.
That
Yeah.
was,
Yeah,
So.
and that didn't go through insurance, that went right through the paper mill.
yes,
Yeah,
So it could be used,
Yeah.
there's,
on the current
on the
service reimbursement
Yeah.
ordinance.
And this is not new, we've never billed for a house fire,
No,
but we have billed in the past.
Okay, I'm wondering whether does the board want me to go through and make sure that EMS is mentioned every time? Fire department, I mean, doesn't the fire department
It's all- it's
cover?
It's called the fire
Right now.
department.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's also more generally emergency service personnel in here.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that's a problem.
Okay. Well,
I mean, I don't think it's a problem.
I think again, what gets published is a summary, and I think we can tweak it that's not a big tweak.
Yeah.
Still good with it, everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, as I'm looking at we're just talking about the ordinance, not.
Yes.
Not the policy.
And then we can get into the
We'll look
policy.
into the policy next week. We can do that.
That satisfies me.
Okay. You made a motion?
I made a motion, it was
Was there a
seconded.
second?
Yes,
It was.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Select board old business, Fire and Rescue Task Force recommendations from PEG.
Yeah, I just wanted to draw our attention as a board, again, to the recommendations that were made by the Fire and Rescue Advisory Task Force, because they were given to us, but then we accepted them, but we've done nothing with them. And you have copies of them in front of you. In this report, there were 7 summary recommendations that the committee came to, they had consensus about bringing these recommendations to the select board. If you look on the second page, the recommendations had to do with department structure, leadership model, suggestion for search process for new chief, administrative support, creation of an advisory board or committee, some recommendations about the use of the fire station itself, the second floor in particular, and a new name for the department. In an effort to try to move this, to bring this to us so that we can address the work that this committee spent a lot of time working on, I would like to suggest that we focus for the moment on the recommendation number 1, which was the department structure, and the recommendation number 7, which was the department name. The recommendation for the department structure, I just want to get to that. If you go to page 15, the recommendation for the department structure here reads, the department should remain a municipal department. The task force believes staying with the current municipal department structure is the best option, with the addition of an advisory committee that would assist the department's leadership. That advisory committee recommendation is under a whole separate recommendation, so that's not what I want to address right now. I just want to address the department should remain a municipal department. And basically that task force looked at different structures, for how to organize the department, and basically it's just saying we should continue, the recommendation is that we continue what we're doing now, so it's really kind of a null recommendation in a way. And so I would like to I'd like to see if anybody has any thoughts on that, or if we can just say, yep, we agree with that, and kind of check that one off the list.
Yeah, I agree with it. I don't think we can make any action.
No.
Take any action, but.
No, I just want to
publicly say
address
that we agree with it. Yes, I agree with that recommendation.
Nobody's making any, okay. So, then the second recommendation had to do with changing the name of renaming the department, and I'll read what that recommendation was. Recommendation that we update the name of the department to more accurately reflect the emergency medical services in the name. The department is a unified organization providing both fire and EMS services. The task force recommends that the department name be updated to explicitly incorporate the medical services provided by our responders. The task force wants to highlight a concern expressed by some that rescue and the name could cause confusion with the organization, Rescue Inc. With that said, specific recommendations that were floated included Putney Fire and Rescue, Putney Emergency Services, Putney Fire and EMS. I would propose that for us to make any decision about this, that we ask the town offices to one, come up with some cost estimates for what it would cost to change the name on different things and a process for how we would do that. So perhaps a recommendation, some information about what would it cost to, change the name in front of the fire department versus changing things on the trucks, on the vehicles themselves versus changing
the gear.
The gear, like what would be the cost of doing that and how might that work? So that we have that information when we consider whether or not we think that's a good idea or not a good idea. I also would recommend that we put out a survey on the website in general, on the town website in general, about the community's ideas about renaming and their thoughts for names, and that we, of course, go to solicit that information from the folks that are currently in the fire and rescue services here. And so basically I'm recommending that we gather that information and bring it back in order to make a decision.
Okay. Do you have a timeline for that?
I am happy to facilitate the survey part of it within the next 2 months, I could say. What about your end of it? What do you think?
Well, here's my suggestion, because I've met with the officers and I would like to work with them to get a general sense, There's gonna be some research, we're gonna have to do some, data collecting.
For changing stuff.
Yeah.
For the cost, is that what you're referring to?
Costs and what the items are, So logos are not cheap, If the name does change, can it be phased over time? Those are questions that I would like to sit down with the department. And I would like to hear if they have any comments as well as we're talking through this. So.
Yeah, totally.
And I have asked them, can you create a list of the assets that would need a name change to them? So.
Yeah,
And that's gonna take
if
a
you're
little.
saying phased, like how quickly do they phase out? Like the fire truck doesn't phase out for years, but the uniforms, if there's patches on the uniforms or things like that, those might cycle through faster.
Well, that's what we don't,
So
we don't have that information.
so
We need
Right.
you
This is
all
why
to
I
give it
work
to us.
with.
Yeah.
So Mr. Harrow does have a comment.
Go ahead.
So I think at our meeting, I think there's nobody in the room that, I think everybody thinks that we're Putney Fire and Rescue right now. It's not anybody sitting in the room that thinks it's Putney Fire Department. It's Putney Fire and Rescue, that's kind of what it is. The sign may not say that, some of the trucks may not say that, but that's what we are. So as far as that goes, I don't think anybody, at least anybody down there, doesn't have a problem with the name on the truck saying Putney Fire Department on the engine. Our squad truck already says Putney Fire and Rescue on it. I think we kind of, in our officers meeting, decided that was maybe a little bit, as far as all the stuff we have going, it was kind of low hanging fruit. We didn't really think it was a priority, but if other people do, then that's fine. I think probably if the best way as far as the lettering of the trucks is if we get a new vehicle, then that's probably the time to put the new lettering on. Yeah, so I guess that's, I guess it depends on if somebody really, I mean, if we want to spend the money to do it, I guess that's not up to me. I sort of think it's crazy to spend a whole bunch of money to re-letter all the fire trucks down there. But
Right, I don't think.
we could talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're not, there's, what would it cost,
Yeah.
We don't have, as a select board, we don't know the answer to that, and we need your help. I can't see it. We need your help to figure that out, and propose a way to phase it in, but first we have to decide if we want to change the name of the department. And help, I think it would be helpful for us to know that if we kind of knew well, first of all, if we knew what people wanted, do you feel like you all came to consensus that Putney Fire and Rescue was the name you wanted to go with? Because we talked about different things through this advisory process.
I mean, honestly, I think the group of people that's down there right now, I don't think anyone really, not that they don't care, but they don't really care. They just want to show up and do what they do, and the name doesn't really mean a whole bunch to them. But there is, I mean, there's no doubt that EMS is 50% or greater of the job that gets done down there, and to recognize it isn't a problem. But I think everybody thinks it's Putney Fire and Rescue as it is. I mean, that's what our shirts say, so it's not. But I mean, we can have the conversation, and but I don't think anybody's gonna whole big stink about changing the name. I think they're fine with whatever.
Len?
I just want to talk broadly. Chief Carlos mentioned I joined about 2 months ago, and I can tell you that the folks that are down there are, they have what I call the it, and you can't teach the it. They are eager and motivated to learn and to move forward as a group, and you can teach them how to do the job, but having them have that type of attitude is great, and they have it, and they're doing good. We've had some trainings, and they come out of it, and when can we do more? When can we do more? And people are given different tasks, and you're seeing people grow as officers and individuals of the department. So I just want you to be assured that things are going in the right direction, and you should be proud, and I'm proud to be part of the organization. There's a lot to do between what the task force said and what the AP Triton report said, and we're chipping away at it, but things are going good, and I just want you all to be assured of that.
I just want to reiterate that I hope my bringing these recommendations and asking the select board to pay them some attention in no way is considered to be a critique of the department in any way. I am eternally grateful for the way things have shifted and are going down there. So, yay. But I do want to bring us back to this recommendation because I want us to address these things that this committee spent, including you, that we spent a lot of time working on. So suggestions, yes.
So I think when we were in the thick of this whole thing, I think there was confusion, at least among the select board, on what the fire department was actually doing. And for me, it was a shock to find out that EMS was, you know, more than half of the calls. So, you know, I wasn't aware of that. And we are, as a select board right now, next year's select board might not be as aware of that. So I think it is important to at least have what that department actually does in its name officially, so that when it comes to the select board, we know that it's those two things. I don't care what it's called, but I think we should bring it up as a community and come up with a name that makes sense to everyone.
Or at least start the process to see what it would cost, you know, you know.
Well, there seems to be two different things, kind of what we call it and what name we come up with, and then how we institute that change.
The change on the website is relatively easy.
Right. We could do a simple change, you know, there are some things we can change easily. So I guess, let me ask the select board whether, what do you think about the idea of changing the name of the department, and then looking at how to phase things in? To what degree do you feel like we have to have the answer of how to phase things in before we do that?
I don't see why we have to do it that way.
I think providing greater recognition to the people who are doing most of the heavy lifting is a real good idea. The only concern I would have is if somehow having half of the people say one thing on their uniform and the other half says something else would in any way create a safety issue. That would create confusion about who's, and I'm having a hard time seeing how that would be. So
I don't think we're gonna run into a situation like that. Like our bunker gear or rescue gear, it simply says Putney on the back. It doesn't say anything other than just Putney. So as far as that goes, we're probably not gonna change any of that. That's what our gear is gonna say. Our shirts already say Putney Fire and Rescue on them. So there's not a huge change there unless we decide to go with something other than Putney Fire and Rescue. But, you know, I mean, I think probably the simplest way to go about it is, I mean, you go down there and ask the folks what they want to be called. I mean, that would give you a good direction to go in. If it was a split on what they think, then, you know, maybe we have to look a little deeper into it. But I don't think anybody down there is gonna throw a big stink at what they're called. Like I said, they almost don't really care. They just want to do the work.
Then I'm going to make a motion to change the name of the fire department to Putney Fire and Rescue.
second,
Go ahead.
I would think it would be worth at least asking the question. That is from me, and that's what I think. But I think you should go down there and ask the question. That's just that. Before you make a motion and change the name, I would ask the people that are showing up and doing the job. That's my opinion.
I think maybe it should be a specific recommendation, a specific agenda item on the agenda.
Okay, then, I mean, I was just kind of going right with what you were saying, nobody cares. So I'm trying to if nobody cares, then let's do it, but obviously people care.
I'm just saying, you know, sometimes even if you know they're not going to care, you should at least ask them just to be sure that that's what they want to be called.
Okay, then I'm gonna go back to the beginning of when I talked before about what I would like to recommend is that we do a little bit, take some time in the next month or two to survey the department, get any feedback from the community about the name that they want to shift the fire department to in order to be inclusive of the emergency services. Then I will bring it back to
On the agenda.
on the agenda, a motion to change the name to whatever name seems to be the right name to go. Does that
Can I make-
sound good?
Can I make a suggestion that we don't open it up to every single possibility and just keep these three here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
No McFire.
Yeah.
One more thing.
Make fire face or whatever.
Yeah. I would hope that the opinion of the folks down there is going to weigh
We will.
very, very heavily on the decision.
Yes, we will give, I will ask that question in any survey I put out as to what, what the relationship to the department is, and that would.
I think asking the community is also nice, and just for the community to acknowledge that this is happening, as in honor of you folks, because it's the people who say we don't really need the attention that deserve it the most. People should know it's happening for a reason.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, first, Chief Harlow is right. The members of our Putney Fire and Rescue Department should have dibs on what they are called. Pardon me. So I'll just repeat that. The members of the Putney Fire and Rescue Department should have dibs on what they are called. No one else should be deciding that for them. Chief Harlow is right. Second, predominance of EMS calls is national because of enhanced fire protection, which is why Brattleboro and Springfield, which have career firefighters, run ambulances as well as fire calls, because otherwise they wouldn't have that much to do. Because the recommendation of remaining a municipal fire department was raised, what's the alternative in Vermont? The alternative is a fire district like Westminster. And for the public's information, if 20 Putney voters petition the Putney Select Board to consider forming a fire district, the Select Board will be required to do so. However, if 5% of voters object, it will go to a town meeting. The site there is 20 VSA section 2481. So it actually is open, and that is the alternative, is a fire district. Westminster has one. We could ask Westminster how they like having a fire district. There may be advantages that we should consider. I don't know, but I'm simply offering the suggestion that we, while we're considering all these things, that we look at that possibility and say we prefer a municipal fire department or we prefer a fire district, and here is why. Thank you.
And Mr. Fairman, just so you know, the committee did go through and look at all those different recommendations for different options for that.
Indeed. However, in Vermont, there's just the two. You can have a municipal fire department or you can have a fire district.
No, and you can have a nonprofit.
Yeah.
A nonprofit organized fire
You
department.
can form a 501c3
Yeah.
and then the town can contract with that organization.
And so we studied all three of those options quite extensively before we circled back around to we like what we've got.
Well, good of you to mention it after you were prompted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fairman. Heather?
I may be the only one with the unpopular opinion, but I would love to hear an explanation about priorities and why a name change is a higher priority than doing an operations study.
Can you
Yeah, but
elaborate
I'm
on
not
that?
sure what you're.
So if we're looking at the AB Triton report, and especially as it's laid out in the paperwork, excuse me, that came out through the task force, we're looking at strategic planning processes after completing an operations analysis that was not addressed. Localized response performance benchmarks was not addressed. But the priority seems to be a name change. Why does that take a higher priority than operational issues?
Because it's low hanging fruit.
Because we can do it right now.
Can I follow that up? At what point do we affect change with low hanging fruit? This wasn't done because everything was great. This was done to look at potential issues, and there were a number of them found. So low hanging fruit, while easy enough to do, doesn't change anything.
It may or may not, but yeah, but those other things are still on the agenda and they're big and serious and long-term projects. So don't expect us to solve them tonight.
Any other public comment in the room? Anything from the select board?
All set.
You're all done?
I'm done.
Okay. We have no status report update, select board, public comments not on the agenda. Done.
There was a question, or comment, I guess it was a question raised under item 7C when Sue was talking, and it was about a particular type of business. I don't want to address that particular type of business. I'd kind of like to ask what prompted that question. Do we favor that type of business? Do we disfavor it? Do we want to relegate it to a certain part of town or say you cannot come here? What was behind the question, if I just asked? And that's going to raise another comment that I have, depending on what you say.
What prompted it is that we are now the Cannabis Control Board, and it's something I think we should be thinking about.
Okay, so
is it appropriate to put a cannabis dispensary next to the school?
You're going along where I'm headed. Yeah.
Well, I think it's something that we should consider, and if the zoning ordinance is implicated in that, I'd like the people looking at the zoning ordinance to think about it too, which is what I requested.
So this is why I'm asking the question. So I came in as a resident, now I'm putting on my zoning bylaws advisory hat. I have some concerns that the consultants are focusing on certain things and not that type of issue. Where do we want to put business on Main Street or High-Low Biddy or Old Depot? Where do we want to put just houses? How do we want to differentiate the parts of the town to focus on, this is our business center, maybe it's down here, maybe it's down there, I don't know. Is there a way to do that with zoning? And
well, if you have a background in zoning, then you know that there are permitted uses, there are conditional uses, and that's how you influence those decisions by, and in some zones there are prohibited uses. You don't put, for instance, a solid waste facility right in the middle of your village. You know, these are, you know, there are hundreds of different decisions like that that are made in the zoning ordinance.
So probably one last question is conditional use. Is it possible to, I know Karen has to decide what is the conditional use when she gives a permit. Is there some way to put a list of those in general categories as to, you know, anything that looks like a Starbucks or anything that looks like a Wendy's or anything that looks like a CBD?
You sit down and read a zoning ordinance, that's what it says. It says in each zone there's a list. What's a permitted use? What's a conditional use? What's a prohibited use?
Perfect.
And our current zoning ordinance does that exactly that way for each zone. It's all right there.
Okay, I guess I missed that. I'm going to have to do a little bit of homework. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think this conversation is more appropriate for the planning commission.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that, all that.
I think this conversation is more appropriate for the planning
I
commission.
know, and that's why I didn't bring it up then.
Well, I think you should have brought it up then. This is
Well,
it was on the agenda for that, we had an agenda item on there. And this is not the planning commission.
I didn't think it really followed what Sue was talking about. Sorry about that. I'll keep that in mind next time.
Mr. Fairman?
Mr. Chairman, because the question of zoning has already been raised, I will point out that contrary to a comment that was made, zoning can actually be completely open. Here is an example. The property that is in the V intersection of Old Route 5 and Route 5, it has in its history been the Putney Public Library, a private residence, a store, and now it is a builder's workshop and materials yard. So basically that property can be anything whatsoever it would appear, and all that within some zoning district. I don't know what the zoning district is, but zoning districts are not necessarily restrictive. Now, something else that came to mind, which was a point that Mr. Grandt raised at the beginning of the meeting, is he has raised valid concerns about the changed traffic pattern at Old Route 5 and Route 5 because of the closure of Alice Holloway Drive. And I'm wondering if there's someone who can give us some advice on whether anything needs to be done there to control or calm traffic during this time of an unusual traffic pattern. I'm wondering, for example, whether Vermont AOT is able to have a look at it, given that it is Route 5 is a main road. That's a possibility. I'm also wondering whether perhaps the Vermont State Police or the Windham County Sheriff's Department might be able to give us some advice. I believe Mr. Grandt has raised a valid concern that the traffic pattern there has been changed without any consideration of alteration to signage, including perhaps warning signs that there's an intersection there, or even stop signs. There must be someone who has expertise and can advise us whether we should leave it as is during the coming year, or whether we should do something to prevent the possibility that Mr. Grandt has underlined of there being a serious accident there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, I guess we're going into executive session. Title 1 VSA 313A 1A. After making specific finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the entity or person involved at a substantial disadvantage contracts.
So moved.
We invite Karen.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, duration, huh? Are we having like a quick?
Are we
Yes,
making
let's take a break.
Are we making a decision?
Yes.
Yes, we're making.
It should be quick, folks.
Please,
So
people.
Yeah, let's take a break.
Yeah, I gotta stretch my legs.
Yeah. All in favor? Alright, we're out of executive session and I hear a motion.
Make a motion to approve and execute the lease agreement with VABS LLC for the purpose of quarrying, mining, processing, removing, and marketing all sand for the next 10 years of said agreement. And to authorize Eric McGowan to execute the signature on the lease.
Second.
Okay, there's nobody in the room, public comment, nobody online, all in favor?
Aye.
Alright,
Before we close, do we need to talk about the agenda or the?
well, we can go get there.
Oh, we are getting there. Okay,
We won't let you down.
okay.
So our next meeting is the 21st, and that's a work session, and our agenda will be, I don't know if we're gonna go back there. Or just in general.
Well, Eileen had 2 items. You had, the order of the agenda was 1.
Okay, and then the other one was,
Oh, what was the other one? Can you remember?
Weren't we gonna look at the
Ethics?
not the ethics, the
Rules of
rules of
procedure.
procedure?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like there were a few things that we said.
well, we just said, we wanted to look at the policy, the charge and mitigation rates policy.
Yeah.
I don't know what I said.
I can look it up in my
It was
notes.
really important.
Yeah.
So when you said the order to the agenda.
Yeah, I just want to discuss the agenda
Okay,
and the order of the agenda and what the names of the agenda pieces mean and.
okay, then that subsumes my, one thing I wanted to talk about too.
I've also been sort of having confusion over, is this a work session to work on policies or is it a goal setting session, which I originally thought was the primary purpose of it.
Yeah, goal setting. So as a board, as elected officials,
Oh,
goals for the community, right? That you can you have authority or power to like work on, right? Or achieve, right? But ordinances and policies, job descriptions, that's all part of your role. So,
But they are different.
Yeah.
They are different.
To me.
We
A
could-
work session or a goal-setting session are two different things.
We could split it up and have part of it be a goal setting session and part of it be a work session. I had said that I'd like us to annually put together a list of concerns to bring to the legislature. Like revenue sharing,
right.
county governance.
Yeah, and that's something else that the board can do, is go to the state. I can't do that, but you can as elected officials.
In terms of goals, I would like to see this board define a process for an annual evaluation of the town manager. I was told, an evaluation done before I got on the board.
There was, yeah, I mean, I had
But
said.
I don't know of any regular process, and most organizations, I think, do some kind of annual review.
I had restarted and
So I've done that in the past few years.
yeah.
Yeah, Eileen's been doing them.
But there was no
There's
formal
nothing.
process. I came up with something in consultation with the person that's no longer at VLCT, the human resources person.
Jill?
Yeah, so I talked to Jill and she walked me through a process and we worked on that for a couple of years. It wasn't the best process, but it was a process. But yeah, we should maybe define that, make it more regular, because it should happen.
Well, it should happen
It was.
before the budget is adopted by
Yeah,
the select
I
board.
think your contract says it's supposed to be done before March. But, anyway, yeah, we should discuss that.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm sure there's other things. I think we could break it up a little bit to be a work session and a goal session. Just do a little bit of a whiteboard thing and then get down into.
Yeah, I like your idea about the whiteboard. You need to see it and then prioritize.
And we can always have another one. Because you're feeding us, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna have it catered, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Why not?
Okay.
Great.
So the next meeting's gonna be the 21st. There will be a work session / goal setting at 5:30 at the fire station.
Yeah.
The next regular scheduled meeting will be May 28th at Town Hall at 5:30. I hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.